Well, good evening, everyone. I believe we are going to wait just a few minutes. It is 7 o'clock. Thank you all for joining us. We will wait just a few minutes and then we will begin. But thank you for joining us, everybody. All right. It is 7:01. Welcome, Jefferson. Thank you all for joining us. Very much appreciate you joining us. We know what a strange year this has already been, and what an interesting fall we've had. But we're excited to be able to come to you this evening from the comfort of all of our homes to share a little bit about Jefferson and a little bit about distance learning, our plans to have a successful fall, as well as our plans to continue success throughout this trimester. I have a couple special guests with me today, but before I introduce folks, there is a chat box on YouTube that you can certainly enter any questions. We will be monitoring the chat box throughout this evening. We may answer the questions in the chat box directly. We may put them in a notes document to answer at the end of this session. Or we may stop what we're discussing if it feels like it's a good spot to answer a question in the middle of the presentation. Again, feel free to ask any questions in that chat box. The slideshow can be found, if you would like access to this slideshow, it can be found at bit.ly/JHS Community Forum. This YouTube video will be available on YouTube for a while, and we'll attach it to all of our social media sites and our websites as well. But thank you very, very much for joining us. We are going to get started. So first, I'd like to do some introductions. We have a new member of our team. Many of us have been around for several years, though. My name is Dr. Jason Anderson, proud to serve as principal of Bloomington Jefferson High School. This is my 5th year. I'm super proud of our school, love our community. I'm really excited to be here for another fantastic year.
Hi, everyone. My name is Justin Hall, and I'm one of our assistant principals. I work primarily with students' last names A through L. Also work a lot with the scheduling for students and our teachers. And excited to have everybody here, and hope we can answer any questions that you have.
Hi, good evening. I'm Carrie Jarvis, the other assistant principal, students' last names M through Z. Glad you could join us tonight. Looking forward to visiting with you.
Good evening. I'm Megan Alberg. I'm the Dean of Students this year, and I'm just really excited to be part of the Jefferson community, and I work with all students.
And Chad Nyberg, our activities director, is working on some supervising some sports activities, so he unfortunately cannot join us. He may try to jump into the YouTube chat box to answer any questions. But if you've had any questions related to activities or athletics, if we can answer them this evening, we will definitely do so later on. All right, so the agenda for today, our slideshow, our presentation should last approximately 25-30 minutes, maybe a little bit more, a little less. But we've got through several topics, mostly focused on distance learning and some success tips for students and families for this fall. And then we're going to have some time at the end for questions and answers. Again, for those just joining, you can ask questions in the chat box of the YouTube channel. We will continue to moderate that chat box. We may answer questions via text, or we may we'll answer it by the end of this evening as well. So feel free to ask questions as they come up throughout this evening. But the things we're going to cover, we're going to look at our schedule, our class schedule. We're going to look at some of the opportunities and differences between synchronous and asynchronous meets. We're going to talk about Google Meets in general. We're going to look at our digital learning programs. We're going to talk about some assignments and assessments information, some student connection topics, some success tips, and then a little bit of focus on how we're going to work on transition planning, and then again, save time for questions and answers at the end. We're expected to wrap up by about 8 o'clock tonight, so it should be a quick hour, but it should be fun. Thank you. All right. So the first topic for today is going to be on our distance learning bell schedule. I know that we've received already a lot of feedback on the bell schedule and the synchronous and asynchronous meet schedule. And before we start too much, know that every system and everything new is imperfect, and we will continue to evaluate this schedule and this model. But a couple of different information about background on this schedule. This schedule was created to provide both structure and flexibility. You know, we know that our families and our students and our teachers wanted and needed routines. They needed to be able to have scheduled times with their classes, but we also know that students needed time to be able to work on their other assignments. One of the lessons we learned from last spring was the way we had our meets scheduled and the way we had our classes scheduled is that it wasn't always intuitive for students to be able to schedule time for their other classes, and they would sometimes get behind. So the reason we built the schedule the way it is and the reason we publicize the schedule the way it is to provide simultaneous structure and flexibility. Know that the 30-minute time chunk was a big debate. It was a big conversation that we talked amongst our educational leaders and our teachers about what's an appropriate length of time. 30 minutes, we know, for some is not enough. For some classes, for some students, is not enough. And for some, it's kind of the right amount of time. The other thing is sort of that block schedule was another thing that we discussed. You know, should we have all 6 hours, you know, every day? Was another thing that we had discussed as far as pros and cons go. The reason that we went with this schedule is we believed it balanced flexibility. It also balanced research around screen time and abilities for both students and staff to have continuous and consecutive screen time and being able to focus, knowing that a lot of our students have multiple obligations throughout the day. We do note that yellow time that peppers the schedule is built for flexibility, so our students and our teachers and classes can use those times to add additional synchronous times. We know that it's early. We're really only in the end of the second week of sort of the academic schedule. But one of the big things is what does instruction look like? That is something that we have asked ourselves as education has evolved over the last 10, 15, 20 years, that instruction, generally speaking, especially at the high school level, is not going to be teachers talking for 45, 50 minutes straight and students taking notes. The way that education has evolved is a lot more around collaboration, questions being asked, facilitation of critical thinking, that sort of thing. So the big picture for us that we will continue to examine is how instruction looks in distance learning, how instruction looks to maximize effectiveness. We know that during that synchronous time, students may have time where teachers are delivering content, are delivering instruction. They're delivering kind of a lecture style lesson. But there are other times during synchronous times where students are mostly going to be working in small groups or will be working through problem solving. So it looks different. One of the things that I think is interesting for all of us that we're learning is that families are really getting an inside look at what schools look like and classrooms look like. And so I think a lot of really good questions are being asked about how classrooms look at high school in 2020 and beyond. But note that we know that this schedule is not perfect. We know that it's not perfect. We know that it can evolve. We know that if we have compelling evidence, compelling reasons, that we should evolve it. We will be sending a survey out to students and that should say not teachers, I'm sorry. We'll be sending a survey out to students and parents on a variety of topics, including this schedule. We will be sending a survey out to get your feedback on how a handful of things are working, including this. And again, adjustments will be made to this schedule if we need to, if we have to. We are not locked into it for a certain length of time. If we need to adjust, we certainly can. Similar to that line is that synchronous versus asynchronous time. I think, again, feeling that in schools that a lot of, the class time, that 55 minutes of class time is really synchronous time. But in reality, in most classes, there's going to be a combination of asynchronous and synchronous work during those class times. There'll be teachers delivering instruction for 15, 20 minutes. There'll be directions, and then, there'll be work time, there'll be group time, there'll be problem solving time. So what we're finding is that, that classroom experience is really being broken apart, where in a classroom during normal school, they're all happening at the same time. But one of the biggest changes that we know that we had to sort of adapt to, and this would also be true for a hybrid model, and certainly more about this, but adapting to distance learning, adapting to academic changes was something we needed to focus on for both distance learning as well as for a hybrid model. Again, right, during normal school, students receive that direct instruction, but also do have asynchronous time during most class periods. And that distance learning and hybrid require us to use time differently, to be more creative, to spell things out more clearly. The one advantage, of course, not the one, but one of many advantages when we're in regular school is that teacher's there to direct all of those things. So even if it's asynchronous work, the teacher's there to be hands-on with the kid, with the students. But right now, teachers are delivering direct instruction via videos, via tutorials, using synchronous meets. They're delivering instruction in a lot of unique and creative ways. And they're using their synchronous and asynchronous times really creatively and really to maximize efficiency. But know that since we're still relatively new in this situation, that will continue to grow, continue to improve, continue to evolve. And the other thing to note is, teachers holding office hours that students can elect to join, just really try to find creative uses of time to meet the needs of students. But no, right, again, I want to keep reiterating that we need to be aware that this model of delivery, this model of instruction, will need to adapt to a variety of needs and situations. And so if we need to make adjustments, we absolutely will. So Google Meets, I put this in here. I think most of you are probably familiar with Google Meets and how those work. We sent out this graphic here at the beginning of school. But again, this is the main tool that teachers are using to work with students for synchronous meets or for those video conferencing meets. Each class has 2 reserved meets per week, and I know that that also can look different because if you're observing your student or your student is checking in with you, they may have a video lecture from their teacher on day 1, and it may be more open on that second day. So it may not feel like it's the same experience every week, but know that will also evolve week to week as students and teachers figure out what works best for them and for what the particular units and lessons demand and require. But we built a schedule so that time is sacred, so that time can be reserved for those classes. Just some things we've instructed our students on is just to use we have to use our BPS login. We've asked our students to be, consider lighting and sound and what's in your background. We are not requiring students to turn their cameras on. We know that can sometimes be awkward for teachers teaching to a bunch of black boxes, but there's a variety of reasons why we have not made that a requirement. And our teachers are typically recording meets for future use for students to go back and review lessons or to go back and review material. We are asking our students to be ready at the link 5 minutes early. We know that asynchronous time, can often be not enough time to get a complete task done, but we are asking students to be at the link early. Again, with only 30 minutes, the classes need to start, right on time. We're talking about courtesy and respect, which we would do, of course, in regular in-person school, to just focus on how we share, how we have side conversations, to avoid side conversations in chat boxes, things of that nature. And again, we have several supports built in place for our students and our teachers to make sure and help facilitate successful Google Meets. There were a few, I think a few bugs that first week, but those have really worked themselves out, I think, going into the second week, and I expect that will continue. And Google itself has rolled out a lot of new tools for educators to really make that Google Meet as much of a real person experience as possible. We're going to focus a lot of time now on our 2 digital learning management systems. This was another piece of feedback we received last spring, was basically, too many tools, too many places, too many links. So this is something that we spent a lot of time in spring and summer that our teachers focused on. We have narrowed that down to 2 programs that students or that classrooms will use. And I want to review those with you all because I know that was a major piece of feedback that parents really want to help and support their student with being academically successful, but knowing that families need to be able to know how these tools work so they can help their student. The 2 learning management systems, the 2 programs that our teachers use this year, one is Google Classroom and one is Canvas. Each of those are BPS login systems, so the student has to log in with their BPS credentials, and they've all been invited. If your kid for some reason hasn't been invited or can't access, please contact that teacher right away. But the one nice thing is that either way, whether it's Google Classroom or Canvas, all tasks and assignments feed the hub. And more on the hub in just a second. But Google Classroom and Canvas. Pardon me. All right, so the hub, parents, you all have your own login to the hub, and you can see exactly what your student sees. So I think it's a really nice tool if you haven't done this yet, to go in and log in, and you click on your student, you can see exactly what they see. So you can certainly aid them in kind of planning out their day. And I've got a few screenshots here. This is an example of a student hub. This particular parent has 2 kids in their system. But this is what the main hub screen looks like when you log in. So you can, in addition to some other tools at the bottom, you can see you can report an absence. You can pay for lunch accounts and all those sorts of things. But we're talking about academics right now. So to look at your students, you're going to click on one of your students' names. And you can also see, before I click away, that you can see whether or not they've checked in on that particular day for their attendance. After that, you're going to click on tasks. You can see I've already clicked on it on this particular screenshot, but it does bring up the task list for the students for the day. It organizes it by class, and you can even see some teachers are able to add the Google Meet link directly to the task. That's a newer tool from Google, and our teachers are being trained in on how to add that to every Google Meet link or Google Meet task or Google Task. Pardon me. So for easy access. But again, on this, now that you're in with the studio, you can see whether they've checked in. You can see their tasks for the day. You can see which class is assigning them what work. And then you can also click on schedule, and you can directly access the teachers and their digital page. Now, you as the parent can't access the student's page, but your student certainly can. So if you want to look at what your student is looking at, whether their Canvas page or their Google Classroom page, you can click on that globe icon, and that will bring you to the teacher's digital home base. So just a few more, tips and items on the hub. The hub's platform was completely redesigned over the summer to meet the needs of both distance learning and hybrid and enhanced technology use. We do know there have been a few technical errors. A few of those most of those errors came from that rebuilding that happened over the summer. I'm certainly not a coder or a programmer, but when they redesigned that system, there are a few bugs that came once we started using it. But know that the technology departments are working on remediating those bugs. But if you do notice that something's not working properly, links are dead, or something's not working properly, or in addition to that, if you've got a suggestion for something that may be an improvement, there is a feedback button on the hub, and that is checked daily by Bloomington Public Schools tech department staff. So if you've got either something that's not working well or you've got a suggestion, they do check that. We've made a lot of improvements just by doing recommendations in that feedback tab. The hub is designed to house all tasks and assignments, and students should not have to hunt for what they're supposed to do. Again, big lesson we learned from last spring was, too much, searching and hunting and playing detective. That was that redesign. Now we are also, noticing with that, we're working on our teachers. We're working with our teachers to make sure everything's properly connected with a new tech system and some new platforms. The tech side of things is still work in progress for some folks, but know that our tech support staff, our teaching staff, they're highly dedicated to making all that clean, because we don't want students to have to hunt and to find activities. It should be clearly laid out. time needs to be spent working on activities, not hunting for activities. We recognize that the hub was designed for that, and know that we're still working on making sure that we're fully there. But I'd say this, that if you notice that a teacher has not posted or linked something correctly, like it's a dead link or something is not quite right, or if you feel like a teacher or a class doesn't have something that I'm saying here, you can certainly let me know. We've been going through different teachers' hub pages to make sure things work the way they were supposed to work, and almost 9 times out of 10, the teacher thought they had the thing right and they just clicked the wrong button, and it's an easy fix. So we just notice it and we bring it to our attention, bring it to my attention, we bring it to the teachers and the tech department's attention, and vast majority of the time it's a pretty easy fix. I have my iPad on the second screen, so I'm checking comments for questions as well here, but it sounds like we're flowing. All right, so now I'm going to move on to Canvas just so you can see what Canvas looks like. This is what a Canvas dashboard would look like when the student logs in. I will say that I said Canvas and Google Classroom are the two platforms that we use. Going through them the last couple of days, I think probably 80% of our classrooms are using Canvas. So this is probably the most common thing that our teachers are using and that your student, therefore, will use. So this is the dashboard. As you can see, there's icons for every class that your student has. They can edit the arrangement. They can remove courses. They can rearrange things. There's plenty of settings that the kid can tinker with. But this is what the dashboard looks like in Canvas. When you open a particular class, it brings the student to the classes Canvas page. There's the home page in the middle. The teacher can edit to what works for them. As you can see, this is a trigonometry or calculus class or something. So that, oh yeah, pre-calculus, and so they've got some designs that are math related. So every teacher might do that differently. But the things on the left and the right, they are very much going to be similar when kids are clicking through different classes. You've got your to-do list, you've got grading and feedback on that right-hand side, and so the left and the right-hand side will be very common for every class, but that middle part is sort of the thing that the teachers can edit to what suits them. But this is what the when you click into a Canvas class looks like. And just a few other notes on Canvas. One tip that a parent had brought to our attention as well, and I think we had seen it earlier, but I thought I would share it with everyone else, was that the student can turn on notifications. Right now, the default for notifications is off. So a student can turn on notifications for a lot of things. They can turn on notifications for new assignments, for due dates that are upcoming, for something that's been graded, for a test due date. And it's pretty easy. When they go into their Canvas page, they click on account, and notifications is the first thing they would click on. And I've got a screenshot of what that would look like. But you can see there's a lot of different things that students can turn notifications on for. Now, I will say parents cannot log into their students' Canvas dashboard. Obviously, they can have their students sit down with them and show them what they're seeing. But I will say that there is a tip that parents do have access to your students' login. So if you're in a real pinch, you could borrow your students' login and password if necessary. We certainly don't encourage that for a variety of reasons, but you do have access to your students' BPS login and password. All right, so that's Canvas. Now moving on to Google Classroom. This is what a homepage of a Google Classroom class looks like. It's a much cleaner layout than the Canvas page. But you can see this is a calculus class again. It's got the list of activities. You can see at the top there's the notifications and then some different tabs that the students will click through. But this is the homepage of a particular class. On the classwork side, this is what a student would see, list of assignments, due dates. When we click into assignment, we can see, how many students have turned it in and that sort of thing, and more directions to the assignment itself. And again, this is a student view in that class, showing what assignments had been turned in, which ones are still due and upcoming. Those attachments are, our instructions and things of that nature. So it's a very clean, very simple system, Google Classroom. So those are the two. That's it this year. I think we had a couple more last year. We know that was not a great setup for just how many different places that kids and parents had to go. And two may still be one too many, but for now, this is, I do think, an improvement. And just a few other notes on Google Classroom, like Canvas. Parents do not have direct access to Google Classroom page, but you can go through your student account, your student's account. And just another note on Google Classroom, just to help your kid. I think it's intuitive, but it's a Google device or Google platform, everything that the student does will be done through Google Drive, Google Docs, something that the teachers and students will work through. All right, just another few notes on academics tied into the hub and Canvas and that sort of stuff. Overall, we're treating this fall much more like a normal year in terms of both rigor and grading. Last spring, as you probably note, that while we were in the middle of the crisis part of the pandemic, we made some big adjustments to our grading and rigor policies to help support students and staff and families. As this fall, a lot more, we had a lot more planning time. We had a lot more preparation time. We are by and large, and for the most part, returning to normal levels of rigor and adherence to grading policies. This question came up before about assignments being posted, at kind of at odd times. Normally, right, when you're in school, you get an assignment during your class and it's due the next day or the next couple of days during that same class. But with distance learning this would be true for hybrid learning. Teachers will often post things during, what would otherwise be an odd time. They post it on a Friday night or a Sunday night, but know that that is a window of time. So basically, the reason we do that is to give students a large amount of flexibility in when they get their work done. So your kid may see something posted or even due like Sunday by 10 p.m. But know that if it was due on a Sunday, it wasn't assigned like on Saturday. It was assigned probably the week prior. But we schedule it like that. The teachers schedule it like that to give that kind of flexibility to the student to make sure they can meet the assignments requirements and times that work best for them. Because we know students' lives, especially at high school, they're all over the place, and not everyone can necessarily adhere to a really strict time frame. So we're trying to do our best by holding standards, but also being accommodating and flow. Another thing that we know is that with any new learning model, there can be a lot of stress and anxiety that comes with this change. So if you feel your students' anxiety, stress, or frustrations has reached a boiling point or reached beyond whatever you feel as a normal threshold or reach beyond something that you're comfortable with, please reach out to us. We have a lot of support staff ready to help you and your student work on balance, work on priorities. We definitely are here to help that part of this. We know that we have a lot of students who put a lot of pressure on themselves to be really, really successful. And we don't want any kids staying up until 2 a.m. because they feel like they've got to do everything by a certain time. Please, we are here to work with you on that particular topic. A lot of other topics, of course, too, but that's what I want to make sure to point out. Again, similar to the schedule, our teachers, students, support staff, we're continuously evaluating our academic programming. Please, if there's feedback on anything, that do not hesitate to share it. We have changed and evolved so many things based on parent and student and teacher feedback. We did not, go into this designing it thinking that we're going to get it all perfect on the first try. So anything and everything that you feel is valuable to you, your family, please share it with us. We can take that feedback accordingly. All right, we're getting close to the end of the slideshow here. One thing that we know a lot of families have asked about is that student connections. One thing about school, right, is that social piece, is that connecting to their peers. We know that for students who aren't always comfortable or don't necessarily put themselves out there, school in a way forces kids to be social, be together. It puts them in spots where they make new friendships. And we know that during this time of quarantining and distance learning and all that stuff, it's really easy to kind of be isolated. So I know that, again, we are here to be supportive to you, but know that we are trying to find ways to keep that school spirit alive, to keep that student connection piece alive. Some of the things that we're looking at, some kind of homecoming thing, celebration. It certainly can't be a dance or anything like that, but trying to find some way to keep connected to the school spirit aspect is important to us. Our student council, student leaders are working on that. Football got moved back a little bit, so we probably will try to connect something with the football season. Many clubs and activities are trying to find ways to continue meeting, whether they're meeting digitally, whether they're meeting outdoors in an open space where they can distance. But many activities and clubs are trying to continue. We put a link in here. I believe there was a link put in the chat box. If you or your student wants to explore any activities for your student. Some students, this is more of what students have done, but some students have created small study groups where they meet outdoors, whether they're kids that are in the same class, or whether or not they're just peers and friends. But we've heard some good results of kids meeting on porch or parks or driveways to review class. That can help be something that brings kids together. And additionally, last on this topic is that we have crafted guidelines. One of the things we talked about during school board meetings in August is with distance learning, with supports distance learning 2.0, is that we want to be able to use the resources of the building. We know that last spring, the governor's orders to not basically inhabit any public space, the building was off limits for pretty much everybody. But this year, or this fall at least, we can use the resources of the building. We can allow small groups of students working on certain projects or activities to come to the building to work through those things. So some teachers have began reaching out to certain groups of students, certain classes, to try to organize some activities at school. Now, because we're still, of course, in a pandemic, anything at school is completely optional. It's voluntary. It's supplemental. Band is an easy example because band feels hard to replicate virtually. So I know that they are going to attempt to do some group practices, but we've got a pretty thorough guidelines that our staff will use before they roll those things out to ensure all MDH guidelines and safety is followed. But you may see that coming in the near future. Small groups of students using the building for certain activities. Probably won't be all kids. It probably won't be all classes, but here and there. And that will also give us some good feedback and some good evidence of our practices as we do start to move to a less restrictive model. And before, I'm not going to necessarily read these pamphlets to you, but I do want to remind that we did send these out to families during when we handed out Chromebooks and whatnot during those first 2 days of school. We created a kind of a family guide and a student's guide to distance learning. We made these one-pagers just for some general tips and suggestions for both students and families of how to be successful during distance learning. It has reminders for students. It has some things that families can do to support their students. And I know that we've received a lot of feedback, and it does seem like our students, our families, our staff really are giving it their A+ effort to make distance learning successful. But these two documents, if you misplaced them or you want to look at them again, they are on the distance learning website, which I'm about to cover next. But they are accessible. You can download them or you can print them at home as well. So they're just two separate documents. One's for families and one's for students. Speaking of distance learning website, I have sent this out a few times. This has been the main tool. We started using it last spring and we brought it back for this fall, in which most of our resources and tools around distance learning can be found. It's linked to the main page of our Jefferson website. It's on that main front page. It's one of the main buttons that you can click to, but it will have all of our updates. It has a bunch of resources. It has a bunch of how-to guides, YouTube video guides. It has stuff for students and for parents and for staff. If you need to contact a counselor, there's a way to contact counselors there. So if you want to be able to get some updates on some distance learning tips and suggestions and tools, this would be a good place to go. The website's up there, but it's also linked to the main Jefferson webpage. Our last slide is something I know that's really important to our families, is sort of what does coming back to school look like? How is our district planning to transition back to a less restrictive model? Now, I think we all know that this is not a Jefferson specific topic. This is a Bloomington Public Schools system-wide topic, but I did want to address it here. So in the past several weeks or months since the decision to go to distance learning to start the school year was implemented, leaders throughout our system kind of re-envisioning what a hybrid model couldn't look like in preparation for return. The school board is meeting Monday, so 4 days from now, to discuss our measures of readiness. So speaking of measures of readiness, and I saw a question asked in the chat box about what does that look like. School district has put together sort of a report card of measures of readiness, and basically, red or green. Green means we're good. Red means we still have work to do. And those measures include, of course, preparation plans, building capacity, instructional models, and that will have a series of check marks on whether or not the school district and the school board feels that we can begin return to in-person learning. It is likely that in this conversation that elementary schools would return first. There's certainly no dates of when any of this would happen, but it's likely that elementary students would return first. I've got young kids at home. I know many of you probably either have had young kids at home at some point or still do now, and we know how challenging distance learning it can be for older students, but it can be even a totally different level of challenge for young students. And so it is likely that elementary schools would return first, kind of vet our systems, transportation, food service, health and safety and security, that sort of thing, to make sure that we're feeling sharper, with secondary schools coming at a later date. That's the most likely roadmap. So I believe if you're interested, the school board meeting Monday night, they will show the metrics of readiness and what some of the different benchmarks are, if you're interested in more specifics from a systemic point of view. And it's also likely just, that we're going to have to evolve what the hybrid plan looks like, at least at high school. And this is something that, I can certainly speak to as far as the high school plan goes, that there's reason that we lost viability back in August. So we're going to have to re-examine that hybrid plan and make adjustments so we can have viability, so we can get kids back in the building. It's our goal to get kids back in the building. We are going to, we do want to continue monitoring how it's going in the metro, but we know that kids need to get back in the building. Hybrid plans, if you've seen them, there's still areas of improvement in hybrid plans in general from other school districts. So we want to take what works, we want to improve in areas that Bloomington is really, really good at, but know that this has been the main focus of the school board and district leaders and school leaders, is how do we make a viable hybrid plan, and how do we get kids back in the buildings. All right, so that's it for my slideshow. I'm at 38 minutes, so about 7 minutes longer than I said I was going to, but I am open to questions now. I know they've started to come in a little bit on the chat box. You may have a question that you feel is really specific to your student, but then you have contact information for either the counselor or the administrator. If you think it's a really my kid specific question, you can address it to that person in an email or phone call. But I am going to go back to my streaming tool, and let's look at some questions. I'm going to go skim. Miss Jarvis, if you've seen any that I could address now.
There've just been a few, and a few of them we've been able to answer in the chat. There was just a question about what other area high schools are doing. I don't know if you want to comment on that around the metro.
So this is a cool tool we found here. You can highlight the chat. So yes, we have been monitoring other schools and other districts. We've got a lot of networks and colleagues around the metro. There is a good mixture of schools that are doing distance learning, and there are a good amount of schools that are doing a hybrid plan. Now, hybrid plans, I will say, especially at the high school level, there's a lot of differences in what a school may call a hybrid plan. There is a hybrid plan in which we probably are familiar with. You're here for 2 days, or you're in school for 2 days, or you're at home for the other 3 days doing distance learning. Some schools are trying that. Some schools have students coming 1 day a week. Some schools have certain classes being distance learning and certain classes being in-person learning. So there is a variety of those of how high schools are working through it. I can tell you, working with some principal colleagues at high schools around the metro, even with hybrid, there are some areas that they are working on. They're pleased, of course, that they've got kids coming, and for the most part, I think they're finding success. But there are areas, especially instructional models, that we want to make sure that we hold ourselves to a high. I'll say this: we hold ourselves to a high academic standard at Jefferson and in Bloomington, and we want to make sure that when we transition to that hybrid model, that we maintain that. Looking over at questions, I see some of them have been answered in person. So again, I do think going back to testing came up earlier, and I think it was answered. But 30 minutes is generally speaking not enough time to take a timed test or test with time. So teachers are handling that in a couple different ways. They are either chunking it out over two time periods. 30 minutes on parts 1 and 2 of a test, 30 minutes on parts 3 and 4 of a test. So some teachers are handling it that way. Some teachers are also using that yellow time, that flexible time for a test. So they may assign a teacher, or they may assign students, hey, come back at 2 o'clock on Thursday because we have a test that we need to take. So that is something that teachers have flexibility in. And I think a lot of teachers are just are having tests or assignments that aren't timed. They're more project-based, they're more essay-based, they're more critical thinking based. So that is absolutely something that is being done in a creative manner. So yep, all right, looking here.
Dr. Anderson, another question. What measures are you using for distance learning success?
Absolutely, that's a great question. And so some measures that we're using for is number one, academics, our grading metrics, our grading scales, attendance measures, but we're also doing we're going to be doing a lot of surveys with our teachers, our students, and our families. We know that, I think it's important to acknowledge that even pre-COVID, schools, Jefferson included, had plenty of work that we needed to do. We had plenty of areas that we needed to improve in. And so measuring success then is the same as importance of measuring success now. And so measures for success absolutely does need to be something that we continue to measure. How our students feeling? Are our academic standards being upheld? Do our teachers feel like they're meeting the curriculum, the standards, the standards that they hold for their classes? Do our students feel like they're having access to the teacher? Do our parents feel like their students are being adequately set up for success? So a lot of that, we have our quantitative data, our numerical data, our grades, and our attendance, and and those sorts of things. But we're also going to do a lot of qualitative information from our families, survey data, feedback from parents, even events like tonight, for example, to measure how much improvement and what areas we need to focus on. I see a lot more questions kind of coming in. That's awesome. Let's see, it's kind of coming fast. Let's see if I can find it here.
Dr. Anderson, there was another question just about highlighting again that transition plan. Return to.
And I think so.
Learning.
Just so I see this a group work question. I think that's a teacher piece. We know that in group work, even in again, I keep saying normal school. I don't know if that's the right phrase to use, but that group work it's often measured on an individual basis. I think the times of a group being punished for a student not doing their share should hopefully not be the standard practice anymore. So most teachers who do assign group work have group expectations, but will measure students on an individual contribution scale. I do think, though, if there's questions specific to that, something doesn't feel like it's going quite right, that the classroom teacher is probably the best person for that particular question.
And with that group work, there are part of that question was about the weighting that it receives. Typically, when teachers do that, they put it in the formative category. So teachers break up their grading into two parts, summative and formative. Usually the group work stuff falls into that formative category, which is 20% of the grade, while the summative part, the bigger projects that are more individual, the tests, the essays, those are going to be the things that are going to count for 80% of the grade.
So, and I do think it's important, right? 10th through 12th graders have had some basis of some connections. They may not know everyone, but there's probably more likelihood that they've built some of that up. And with 9th graders coming in such an unfortunate transition to high school, that no one, few people know anyone. I mean, well, I should say, a lot of people went to middle school together, but it's different in high school. I'll just say it's different in high school. So I think that is a fair point. Our 9th grade, knowing that we need to support our 9th graders in their transition has been really important with our, focusing on our teachers. I will go back to the transition transition criteria. That's the word I was looking for. It's mostly around, do buildings have enough staffing to run their programs, to the proper staffing to run their programs? Do we have the proper capacity in our buildings to do our social distancing and to do all those sorts of things? In that, do we have procedures and protocols in place to run that efficiently? I do think this, if you're really interested in that, the school board meeting probably would be the best place to go on Monday night. I do think they're going to walk through that with a little bit more detail, but. Knowing that at Jefferson, I think I can speak because I spoke to it at the board meeting. I want to say in late August. One of our biggest challenges is around social distancing, around the 6-foot rule, and some classrooms not having the capacity. So being creative in how we space students out is still something that we're working through. But those are the major ones. But I think that the school board meeting probably would be the best place to go on Monday night. If you would like a lot more specifics on the metrics. Looking at questions came in. This has been really, really great. Finals. So I'll speak to finals. Finals, I do think, are going to still be on the same dates they need to be. We know that we did start a week later from academics, at least. Excuse me. But finals will still be on the same dates because everything's tied to that transition period to both trimesters. And what have you, but know that, the delivery of finals, right, being different. Normally, you get a 90-minute block, and finals are this really sacred time at the end of the trimester that's going to have to be done creatively. So good question. More to come on how finals will look as we get a little bit closer, but I would imagine and anticipate they're the same dates that they are as published.
Dr. Anderson, there was a question. I don't know if you can see that or you want me to read it to you about the hybrid model and teacher exemption.
Let me read it. Yeah, I see
that
it.
One.
Yeah, there is. I think that that's something that our district is working with our teachers is to figure out how to best manage the medical exemptions of our staff. And there's creative ways of doing it, and that's, I think, some of the lessons that we need to learn, that we need to be creative with. I do think that hybrid is viable. I do think that it needs to evolve from the plan that we proposed in August. I think that's just a reality, but that's okay too, because that we'll be able to create something that has the best chance of success. That's okay. That I like this here. I want to pop it up here. Kim, hopefully you're okay with that. The building boost and in-building hybrid model, will there be a tour orientation? I can confidently say that is something that we want to be able to provide. We've talked a lot with our transition to 9th grade programs called Pathfinders. So when we get back to the building, know that for 9th graders, we don't want to just dump them in thinking like, get to work, because it's brand new to them. That school is brand new to them. The where to go and all that stuff that we know is just part of going into high school, the nerves of going into high school. So that's a really, really good question and suggestion. So I think that's something that we will explore. Absolutely. Is there a reason most teachers switch to Canvas? I think that I don't know why most are using Canvas. As I was doing some checks through.
I can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Hall.
Yeah, so last year, we had basically 3 different options that teachers could use. Google Classroom, Canvas was a new system that we were started last year, but then we also had Moodle. And Moodle, we were transitioning away from and into Canvas last year. This year, we've completely gone away from Moodle. And so Moodle was the model or one of the more popular ones that teachers were using. And so since those teachers needed to switch, most of them, many of them have transitioned to Canvas. And part of that had to do with the fact that transitioning their materials from Moodle to Canvas was an easier transition.
All right. Going through questions, making sure I didn't miss anyone. Yeah, I agree with the topic around the transition plan. I know that it's a really it's a pretty critical topic as far as how are we measuring success of getting back in the building. How are we measuring, the readiness of getting back in the building? And there's a lot of parts at play. It's not. It's a really big project because there's health and safety at play here, and I think it's really critical that we ask ourselves around instructional practices. We want to be really mindful that when we return, and I'm confident that we will return, that our academic programming has to meet, I'll just say, Jefferson standards. It has to. That's something that feels to me that is got to be one of the like top level priorities, right? With that health and safety thing, is that we can maintain our high standards of academic programming, and we know that distance learning has its drawback with academic programming as well. I certainly can acknowledge that, but making sure that those two things go hand in hand for our return to school is really, really important to us. All right, we've got about 8 minutes left. I want to acknowledge, I'm going to be honest, more people came than I thought were going to. More great questions than I was a little nervous. It'd be quiet on the chat box front, but I'm really happy about that. So thank you so much. I'm continuing to monitor. Dylan, or there's a question around the building access. Yes, all teachers have been provided that. So maybe if you want to talk to me, I'm going to talk to me personally. Email me about what particular program is maybe not having access to the building use guidelines. I can help that staff member. All right.
I did real quick. Just want to go back to some of the new technology, whether it's Canvas, whether it's some new features in the hub. There have definitely been some bugs that we've been working out as we've started the year off here. But make sure that if your child is having situations where they're having difficulty navigating any of those tools, finding the information that they need, definitely have them reach out to teachers, or as a parent, definitely contact the teachers, and they're more than willing to be able to sit down, kind of walk your child through those things and make sure that it's really clear for them. That's part of the reason with the schedule, having some of that open time in there so that teachers have an opportunity to do some of those individual check-ins and things to make sure that students know where to get the information they need.
Perfect. All right. Well, we got a couple minutes to spare. I don't want to lose any last questions if they're there. Again, really pleased with this. Okay, that's the last question here. Does attendance count from logging? So school attendance is the hub login. That's the official login. That's the official attendance that we're using to report attendance to the county, like we are required by the state. the Google Meet attendance is being tracked by teachers. It is the expectation that you make those meets, but the teachers are tracking attendance, and that we use that data when we're talking with students. But the school login is the hub, but the teachers are required to take attendance, and the students are required to show up to their synchronous meets. And there's a way for parents to call their students out if there's a doctor's appointment or a reason that the student can't make it. There is a way through attendance that parents can excuse their student from the synchronous meet. All right.
Couple more questions. One about attendance counting, count for logging into the hub or attending Google Meets. The attendance for logging into the hub, that is recorded in Infinite Campus. Teachers are monitoring their Google Meets to make sure that students are attending. We really want students to be able to take advantage of that opportunity for those Google Meet, those class times, and be able to connect with their teachers, connect with other students. And so the teachers will be monitoring that. Obviously the main focus is students being able to get their work done, make sure that they're understanding the material and things like that. But that is something that is recorded. There was also a question about hybrid days. If we do go to transition to hybrid, those assignments that will be communicated out, siblings, we will definitely try and have on the same day. It really starts with transportation, and then those, especially at the high school level, that are either driving themselves, walking, we'll kind of assign those students to give us the best balance of students in the building as possible.
Well, thank you again, everyone. I know we're getting near that time. If you didn't get your question answered, if you have a question after this, you can always email me. I can either answer it or get it to the right person. I'm happy to do that. That's my my number one job here is to serve you all, the students, the families, and the teachers. So no questions too big, too small to send my way, send our way. We are happy to serve. We know that where we're at now is tough. Our world is in a tough spot, but we continue to be a building. We continue to be a community. We continue to be a high school that is here to support every single one of our amazing learners and families. With that being said, I am going to end this broadcast. It will be available on my YouTube channel, and we'll get it posted to various social media and website sites. But again, thank you so much for joining us. We may try to do this again before too long. We'll see how some things go with the school board meeting, and that, so we can be delivering consistent information. Again, 7:58, 2 minutes early. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much again for joining us. Till we meet again.